Good evening, and thank you very much for joining Memphis Light Gas and Water's Empowering Sustainable Neighborhoods. I am Gail Jones Carson, the Vice President of Community and External Affairs. Empowering Sustainable Neighborhoods is a series of virtual workshops for those interested in community-related environmental topics. Today's webinar topic is Rent with Power. We plan to provide you, our customers, with information about renters' rights and special programs that can assist you as you all navigate through the current rental climate. Our guest panelists today are James Smith and Robin Warren. James is an outreach specialist with the Shelby County Division of Community Services. In his role, he develops relationships with nonprofits and organizations within targeted Shelby County communities in order to connect residents with the services his organization provides. James is a graduate of Fraser High School in Memphis. He earned his bachelor's degree at Christian Brothers University. Our other guest, Robin Eugene Warren, works for Memphis Area Legal Services. He will discuss renters' rights. Robin has a Juris Doctorate degree from the University of Memphis Cecil C. Humphrey School of Law. He has been a licensed attorney since 2016. He's been a staff attorney for the Memphis Fair Housing at Memphis Area Legal Services since 2018. And currently he serves as its managing attorney. Robin represents clients in state and federal court, before administrative agencies, and other appropriate forums on legal matters related to various landlord and tenant matters, with a concentration on unlawful ousters and property tax redemption litigation. So thank you so very much for being here with us today. We greatly appreciate you taking time to provide this valuable information for our customers who are renters. James, we'll start with you so you could talk to us some about your program and how what you all do can be very, very helpful for renters.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Carson. I'm going to try to be very brief. There's a lot of different services that we offer here through our office at Shelby County Division of Community Services, but our main focus is going to be dealing with the Rent Utilities Assistance Program. And I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint to run through, and we can get the information we need. All right, so as it was said before, my name is James Smith. I work for Shelby County Division of Community Services, and I am an outreach specialist. We have several different departments within our division, the Aging Commission of Mid-South, Community Services Agency, Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center, Veterans Services, and then, of course, Office of Justice Initiative. My office is the Office of Community Engagement and Outreach. We just support the rest of those departments. All right, so you're going to have contact information at the bottom left of each one of these pages for each one of the departments that I briefly go through. So the Aging Commission of the Mid-South deals with our seniors and our disabled adults. If you look here, there's a plethora of services that they offer, including homemaker services where someone can come in the house and aid and assist them if they've gotten to a point where they can't bathe or things that nature by themselves. They can do that as well. They help them with SNAP. If they need it, they can do MIFA Meals on Wheels and deliver those in home services as well. So the Community Service Agency. The Community Service Agency, that's one of our most well-known departments within the division. They also do utilities, rent, prescription program. Then they have what you call SURF. It's a self-empowerment resilient families, and that's to help families obtain financial stability and maintain it as well. We'll go a little bit deeper into that in a moment. Our Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center is a 24-hour forensic assault examination kits area. They also have 24-hour help hotline as well. Counseling is offered to victims of crimes, both rape and any other type of crimes, maybe assault, burglary, things of that nature as well. Our Veteran Services office, they help to support veterans and their families, the spouses and or the dependents of veterans as well. They can do applications for benefits from the beginning to the end. They have burial benefits. They can help do change of address, a whole lot of different other services as well. The main thing is they help veterans, the spouses of veterans and the dependents of veterans to get the benefits that they have already earned. And then Office of Justice Initiatives. This office deals with the before, during, and after of incarceration. So from pre-trial services, behavioral health unit, things of that nature. What's really important to know about this department is all of the clients that come through this department are referred directly through the criminal justice system. And then our office, again, we support residents and our coworkers. So we do the outreach for all of our departments. We are on boots on ground, developing relationships with different nonprofits, organizations, businesses, and helping to get the information about the social services that we offer to the residents in Shelby County. So just a little in-depth dive on our CSA agency. CSA has 4 programs: the Utility Assistance Program, which is LIHEAP, Rent and Mortgage Assistance, which is SEEP, and then Self-Empowerment Resilient Families, which is SURF. They also have the Medical Prescription Program. I'm going to go over each one of them. So the Utilities Assistance Program can give up to $1,000. Can give up to $1,000 in, in assistance for utilities. Now they have a regular assistance guideline, and these are all listed here. Active utility service can't be cut off. You have to be have been assisted. You could not have been assisted in the current year, and then it's a 30-day process on that. With the emergency assistance guidelines, it can be paid up within about 72 hours. They can actually pay those utilities, but you have to meet one of the requirements below here. Be someone in the household has to be 60 years or older. A member has to be 5 years or younger. Household member has a disability, or you experience some kind of uncontrollable circumstance.
James, I do have a question here. You mentioned about your receiving funding only once a year. So are you on a fiscal year or a calendar year?
It is a fiscal year. It begins in October. Each October, it resets.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, so these are the financial guidelines. Of course, each one of these programs are going to have financial guidelines. You can't make more than the annual income, monthly income here for the LIHEAP program. Written mortgage, so the SEEP program, it's up to $2,500 per household towards your rent or your mortgage. And then, of course, these are your guidelines here as well. With the CARES Act, which is no longer, I don't believe is going to be reenacted. It was a COVID-19 related program. It was up to 3,000, but they haven't said whether they're gonna reenact that program or not. If they don't,
when you say 3,000, when you say 3,000, you mean customers were eligible for $3,000? Was that
yes,
for
ma'am.
rent and utilities combined?
That's just for your rent or mortgage.
Oh, okay.
Just for rent or mortgage. So residents can receive up to $2,500 per household for your rent or mortgage under the SEEP program, and then under the CARES Act guidelines, it was up to $3,000, which, like I said, they haven't said that that's going to be reenacted or not. But the $2,500 is a per year thing. It's been going on, and it will continue to go on.
Well, I do have another question.
Yep.
So initially, when much of this funding became available 2020, 2021, it did not include funding for mortgages just for renters. So now you're saying that homeowners, if they meet a certain criteria, those dollars are available for them as well?
So that CARES Act program has been in place as well. Again, that program has been going for at least the last year and a half. I don't know if it will be reenacted, if they're going to refund that program at this moment. It is currently out of funding. If they choose to refund it, then they'll continue it. They may not though.
Okay, thank you.
But that has been available for about a year and a half as part of what I've been doing outreach with R4.
Okay.
So your medical prescription program, residents can receive up to $1,000 per year towards their prescriptions as well. It lists the participating pharmacies here. The guidelines said that it had to be non-narcotic, but they have relaxed that guideline so that it does include some narcotic prescriptions as well now. Again, all of these current programs are out of funding due to just exhausting the funds and the need and reaching the residents in Shelby County and helping at such a higher rate than in the past. But they will be receiving funding in October again. The only program that currently still has funding under CSA is the utilities program, which you can still receive that up to $1,000 towards your utilities. And then this is the family support, family support, self-empowerment, resilient families. So the SURF program, and they offer different things like financial classes, if need be, some resources to gain higher education, things of that nature, food, supplies. But it's focused on helping those resilient families obtain and maintain financial stability. And these are all the guidelines for the rent and mortgage, SURF, and medical prescription program. Again, CSA does focus on low to poverty income levels. All right, so this is how you would apply. You can go to shelbycountycsa.org, and each one of the programs has a specific email as well. Lahib, this is for rent and mortgage, SURF here as well. And then you have application drop boxes as well for persons who want to fill them out, who can fill it out in paper and drop it off at the location. All right, so one of the main focuses that we've had in this office is our emergency rent and utilities assistance program, not to be confused with the rent and utilities assistance program that CSA offers. This is a federally funded program between the city of Memphis and Shelby County that we administer. Those funds have been put in the same pot, city of Memphis and Shelby County dollars, and we just administer the program. So this program is a direct response to COVID-19, and it is a program that is for persons who have been financially affected by COVID, which most of us have. So just so we do know, this program has been going on for about the last 2 years. It is coming to an end. The 31st of this month will be the last day that we will accept new applications for the emergency rent and utilities assistance program. So this is really a big time for us right now. So it'll be ending on the 31st. Applications submitted prior to the closing of the program, of course, will still be processed and we'll still receive full benefits that we're going to talk about once we move forward. So home901.org will still go on after. Of course, after the program is closed, it's still going to be a resource for Shelby County residents. And then CSA, of course, will still have their programs with rent, mortgage, and utilities assistance as well. All right, so the ERA program offers up to 12 months of past due rent and utilities for our Shelby County residents. So that's the biggest thing. It's not a cap. It's not $2,500. It's up to 12 months back rent or utilities. The application portal is open this month for the last time, the 1st to the 31st. And then, of course, our qualifications are you have to have a loss of income due to COVID-19. you have to be behind on rent or utilities, and you have to be within 80% 80% of the area median income or less. And then, of course, you have to be a renter in Shelby County, whereas CSA has a mortgage program. This is specifically for renters. And these are the income guidelines. If you take a look, a simple glance, you see these are a lot higher income guidelines than most programs like it, and it's of course designed so that you can touch and help and affect more persons within Shelby County. So $38,500 if you're a single person in the household, you can make up to $38,500, and it goes up as you increase the amount of people in the household. So the program benefits are, of course, members are available, of course, for application assistance at 211. So you dial 211, you can ask questions. They'll help you out with whatever questions you have about the application process. There is no cap. Of course, it's up to 12 months past due rent and or utilities. And then you have free legal services for those persons who are facing eviction. There are attorneys that we assign to each case that have an eviction notice, that go to court with them, advocate on their behalf with the judge and with the landlords. Applicants do not need to prove citizenship. There's a spot for social security numbers in the application, but you don't have to actually plug in a social security number. You can do all zeros if for some reason or another you don't have a social security number.
So there's no fee for that service?
No, ma'am.
For the legal assistance?
No, ma'am. There's no fee. There's no fee for anything that I've talked about today.
Okay, great.
Application status updates are available during the process as well online at home901.org where you apply. So step by step, of course, you're going to apply at home901.org and complete the online application. You can dial, like I said, 211, or you can actually email help@home901.org for assistance. If you need assistance with actually filling out the application, you can dial 211 and you can make an appointment to go into one of the help centers at libraries across Shelby County, and they'll help you, assist you with the application in person at the library. Second step, after you've applied, there's a selection process. Evictions and cutoff notices are prioritized. That doesn't mean that you have to have an eviction or a cutoff notice. It just means if you do have an eviction or a cutoff notice, they will prioritize your application, basically push it to the top so that we can try to help to keep you from being evicted or your lights cut off. The third step is the review process. There's going to be a reviewer that's assigned to your application once it's selected, and they'll cross the T's, dot the I's, make sure all of the documents and paperwork are processed and acceptable. If there's something that you need or you forgot, or a document that's not acceptable, they'll email you and let you know, and they'll get that document from you. The fourth step is they'll contact your landlord. So landlord and or MLGW. So they'll contact them. And on the MLGW side of it, you all are already partners. So MLGW is a smooth process with that. Everybody in Shelby County, for the most part, has MLGW, so they'll contact MLGW, and the program will run from there. If it's a landlord, of course, they're going to email that landlord. So it's important that you have a solid email and a solid phone number for your landlord. And then they'll have to verify what you owe, and how much you owe for what months and things of that nature. So the landlord has their portion that they do, as well as MLGW verifies what's owed on that end as well. And then the last and final step is it will be paid out directly to MLGW or directly to the landlord. Now, this is a 7 to 12 week process because it is up to 12 months back rent and utilities. They're going to make sure all T's are crossed, all I's are dotted, documents are in, documents are solid. So you want to manage those expectations and let them know it's a process. All right, so what do you need for a successful application? You're going to need, of course, a lease. All right, so you need a lease showing that you're a renter, showing what the location that you're in at, and the signatures from those persons who enter into that contract. So that's going to be the first and the last page of your written lease. Also, they will accept a written statement as well. So if you're like, renting out of a room, or something of that nature. You might be at a rooming house, or you might be renting from someone, renting a room from someone, or something of that nature. They can actually do a written statement as well. You have to show proof of income. So the easiest way to do that is with your tax return. You can use Social Security checks. You can use bank statements. They will also accept a letter stating no income if you're unemployed. Social Security number is not required, but it is asked. It's a spot for it. Of course, you had to have faced some type of financial hardship due to COVID, so you have to be able to articulate and or prove how you were financially affected by COVID. So just to kind of clarify that, if I lost my job, I got a pink slip, right? Or if I had unemployment, that's going to prove that I lost my job and I don't have income, or I had unemployment income. For some people, that may not be as easy. If I'm on Social Security or some type of fixed income, and I was supplementing my income maybe by cutting grass. I cut grass during the summer, and Memphis doesn't get a lot of snow, but I shovel snow during the winter. You can write a statement showing or saying how you lost that income as well. So I simply write a statement saying that I earned $1,000 a month cutting grass, or self-employment, doing this or doing that. And that can actually serve as a statement, self-attestation on how you lost income due to COVID as well. So if you're looking for rent assistance, you're going to have documentation from your landlord with total amount you owe, court issued eviction notice. If you have it, you don't have to have one, but if you do have an eviction notice, include it because it's going to get you prioritized. You have to have your landlord's email address and phone number. If you're looking for utilities assistance, of course, an MLGW bill is going to have the account number on it, and it's going to have the current bill or cutoff notice if it's your most current bill. So you need that most current MLGW bill. All right, so this is what a actual eviction notice looks like, and the reason why we include this, is because a lot of people get letters or threat of eviction and things like that from landlords, and that's not an eviction notice. This is what an actual eviction notice looks like. This is what actually gets your application prioritized. If you don't have this, you're not currently under eviction, and Robin is going to probably have a lot more information about that. And just for that question that was asked already, I can make this available, this PowerPoint available. All right, so how to apply? Go to home901.org up until August 31st. You can go to home901.org. You can actually text Home 901 from your smartphone to 21,000, and the link will pop up, and you can apply right there. If you're a Spanish-speaking person, you can text Casa 901 to 21,000, and of course, it'll still be available. That link will be available, and the application will be in Spanish. It's available in Spanish if you go to home901.org too. You can scan the QR code. So there's a lot of flyers and rack cards that we've been passing out. All of them have the QR code, code on it, so you can scan that. It'll pop right up as well. This application can be done 100% by your phone. You can take pictures. You can take pictures of your documentation and upload it. Everything can be done as long as it's clear and legible. This is the actual website. If you go to home901.org, you hit rent and utilities assistance. It's going to say I'm a renter, I'm a landlord, I'm a community partner. And whichever one you are, that's what you're going to click, right? So if I'm applying, I'm going to be a renter. If I'm a landlord, I'm going to click I'm a landlord. And for a lot of you all, your partners, you can click I'm a community partner. You can request flyers. You can request a presentation like I'm doing today. And of course, it's over on the 31st. But if you have something coming up, please reach out to me. I'll love to come out and take care of it for you. All right. So once you click there, it's going to have a checklist here. You review the checklist, get all your documentation together, and then you go apply. It also has a spot right there where it says check my status. That's for once you've applied, you can go back and check your status and see what step your application is in the process.
All right. That was some very, very good information that you provided. I'm hoping that our viewers learned a great deal from it and will be able to use some of this information that you have provided. So now we will move to our next guest, who is attorney Robin Williams, who is with, he's a staff attorney for the Memphis Fair Housing at the Memphis Area Legal Services. And Attorney Warren is going to discuss with us today, how they help renters. Thank you, Robin, for being with us.
Okay, not a problem at all. So I am Robin Warren, Memphis Area Legal Services. I am the managing attorney for Memphis Fair Housing Center. Before I get started, let me see if I think I'm sharing my screen, make sure
We are seeing your screen.
Okay, you see my screen. I don't know if it's working or not. Let me see. Give me 1 second. Yeah, it's not changing slides. Let me try to do something else. Give me 1 second. Yeah, stop share. Share the screen. Okay. Okay, here we go. I guess I'll just use this one. Okay, I just wanted to cover a few things before we got started regarding repair issues. Since the pandemic, we've been getting a lot of different complaints from a lot of different tenants regarding repair issues, how the landlord is not making repairs, how pretty much they aren't able to go anywhere. And on top of that, landlord's not making repairs. So most tenants are forced to live in just the most egregious of conditions. And so I wanted to cover a few things before we got started, just an overview of what I like to call a few truisms as far as what to do and what not to do, especially when you're looking for somewhere to stay. The first piece of advice that I would give is don't sign a rental agreement before you see the property. And you'd be surprised how many people will actually go in and they would look at they would speak with the landlord and the landlord would say, hey, you have to sign this lease before you can inspect the property. I always advise that it's probably something going on with that. And if you sign a lease agreement, then to some degree, you're going to be legally bound to perform. So if the landlord is not allowing you to inspect the property beforehand, it's probably a good indicator that something is going on with the premises and it's likely you're going to be in the same or similar position. So just walk away. There's no reason to sign it and then be legally responsible because you signed a rental agreement. The next thing that I would like to cover is that most tenants think that their rent is due on the 1st of the month. Your rent is not due. Well, they think it's due on the 5th. I'm sorry. They think it's not due on the 1st, it's due on the 5th because the Landlord Tenant Act gives 5 days in which the landlord can charge a late fee. But the truth of the matter is, in theory, that if you don't pay your rent on or before the 1st, unless your lease agreement says something different, if you don't pay your rent on or before the 1st, then you are technically in default of the rental agreement and your landlord can't evict you. So if you couple that with having like a repair issue, then you're looking at, well, now you're about to be evicted because you made your landlord mad because your landlord decided not to make any repairs, but legally you were in default of the rental agreement because you promised to pay rent on or before the 1st day of the month. And that's something that I have a lot of back and forth with a lot of our clients to explain that your rent is not due on the 5th. And it only comes into play when you're talking about being in court. And if you have an issue where even if you were current on the rent and you're into another month, I've seen a lot of people get evicted because it was the second day of the following month, second or third day. And the next question that the landlord's attorney is going to ask is, well, have you paid your rent for this month? And the most typical response would be, no, it's due on the 5th. And they move for possession of the property. And the person gets evicted because they don't understand the dynamic between when your rent is due. If you read your lease carefully, it always says owner before the first day of the month. So that's just something to consider, especially when you're having issues with your landlord. Because if the landlord decides to evict you because you called code enforcement, or that you reached out to us or any other attorney, if you owe rent, delinquent on rent, there's nothing in Tennessee law that prohibits the landlord from filing an eviction against you, even if retaliation was their motive. So there's something to look out for. And also, there's no legal requirement for landlords to renew the lease agreement. And that's something else that comes up, especially with repairs. If the tenant complains about repairs needing to be done in the premises, and say the rental agreement is set to expire, is not quite expired yet, the landlord will, in some cases, give a notice to tenants saying, hey, I'm not going to renew your rental agreement. Now, that may be, to some degree, some form of retaliation, but it's kind of hard to prove retaliation to the degree that the landlord does not need a great reason or any reason that's not prohibited by law. Your landlord could decide he no longer just wants you in the premises, and that's sufficient enough to warrant them not renewing your rental agreement. They can deem you as a problem tenant as long as they're not doing it based on your protected characteristics. Generally, there's not a problem with that.
And Robin, I don't believe you have started on your official presentation yet, but we have had a request.
Okay.
Do you know if you can, if you're going to be able to go through your slideshow?
Yeah, I will go ahead and go through them
Okay.
very briefly, because I know I just had to get that out because it's like similar information. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. No, and I wasn't trying to rush you through your presentation, just to go make sure you show it in the slideshow mode and not in the development mode.
Okay, let me
So
see.
if you can see, if you can go back to the.
Yeah, because I think I tried to do that and it did not allow me to. For a second.
I think you said something before about having two screens and
Yeah, I
it was
do.
showing
I
the
can,
other
you know what?
screen.
Maybe I will. Let me see if I can. This
You might be sharing the other screen.
like it's supposed to be one. Okay. Okay, so let me try it now. Okay, is that better?
No,
Okay.
we're still,
I think, yeah, that's all I need to do.
there we go.
Are you, okay. All right, so yeah, I will go over the slides. And so the same thing applies for month-to-month tenancies. The Landlord Tenant Act says that a month-to-month tenancy can be terminated with a 30-day written notice by either the landlord or the tenant. Again, your landlord can wake up one day and decide he no longer wants to rent to you, especially if you have an issue where you complain about repairs or something like that. Just like the tenant can decide that they do not want to reside in the property, the landlord has the same rights. So we'll go over the statutory authority. It's very important to know your rights as a tenant. That's the first step in becoming a more complete tenant, in that you will avoid a lot of unnecessary heartache with your landlord if you know your rights. And sometimes you still experience a little bit only because Tennessee law is heavily skewed in favor of landlords. I mean, ultimately the landlord wins, even if it's something that we're able to give a tenant a small victory for. Ultimately, it comes time to renew the rental agreement. And because the landlord does not have to, they end up not doing it at that point. So the tenant, is almost a win-lose situation. But so the main authority of landlord and tenant law is the Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. That's where it can be found. It applies to counties with over 75,000 in population, which does include Shelby County. Now, as I was saying, month-to-month tenancies, there's different types of leases. Tennessee does recognize oral leases. The thing with the month-to-month tenancy or the effect of having an expired lease, now the rental agreement does control the amount of notice required to terminate if the lease has expired, because generally leases renew month to month until notice is given. But it's just a typical, you can live with me, you just pay me rent, or you can live in my property, you just pay me rent, you're a month-to-month tenant. So that's when the 30-day written notice would come into play. A rental and lease agreement can be for any duration. Usually it ranges from a year. I've seen some 2 years. Generally, a breach is required. And sometimes in some events, notice is required too, especially when it comes to your intent not to renew. So it's important to know those terms. And as I was stating earlier, there is no legal requirement to renew the rental agreement. Okay, so just briefly speak about the repair process. You know, as I was saying earlier, before you sign the rental agreement, inspect the property, take photos, you know, don't sign before inspecting the property and documenting everything that's wrong with the property. I would advise even further that if you are in a position where there are repairs that are needed in the premises, that you should not sign until the repairs are completed, because it changes the dynamic. Make sure you pay your rent on time. There is no legal defense for the non-payment of rent. You cannot withhold rent as a response to repairs not being made. And I know a lot of people, they go on television. I've heard of few people who've called in to us where they were advised by someone to not pay rent. If you do not pay rent, your landlord has a legal basis to evict you. You will be evicted, and it doesn't matter that the landlord did not make the repairs. So you want to ensure that you are paying your rent despite the repairs not being made. There are other options, but you cannot withhold rent. And even if your landlord is upset about the repairs, if you owe rent, as I stated earlier, then they can file an eviction against you. Now, the repair process is, the first step would be to put the repair process in writing, or the request in writing. So if your air conditioner is not working, if your landlord has a system where they want you to go through the portal, make sure you go through the portal, and then I will send something in writing. Because it comes some cases where if your landlord has all the evidence, there is no evidence. I would keep my own copy, make sure you have proof that you send it to the landlord, email, text message, certified mail. Now, the landlord has 14 days in which to make the repairs. Now, essential services are a reasonable time, but generally 14 days is the only number stated in the Landlord Tenant Act. So you can assume that 14 days covers everything as far as being unreasonable, as far as essential services go. And as far as just the regular air conditioning is not an essential service, heat is. And I don't know why the law was drafted that way, but you know, sewage, plumbing, heat, essential, air conditioning is not. And I know if you're without AC, especially with the heat wave that we've had in this past summer, or I assume it's still summer, you know, it's kind of difficult to be without AC. But you know, that's when I would advise to call code enforcement. If you call code enforcement is the closest entity that will compel a landlord to make repairs, because generally they will go to the property, inspect, cite the landlord, and give them a certain time in which to make the repairs, and the repairs aren't completed. Generally, code enforcement will take them to environmental court to sue for the repairs to be done. And sometimes, you know, fees are assessed against the landlord. So generally, landlords straighten up when code enforcement is involved. But just say, for instance, if the repairs are not completed within the 14 days, then that is a breach of your rental agreement. Tennessee law does allow you to repair and deduct. That does require you to get estimates. It requires you to present those estimates to the landlord and give them a reasonable time in which to decide, hey, you know, it's like if my air conditioner is not working, it's like I've got 3 estimates, you have to pick the lowest estimate. And also you can break the rental agreement. And that's a lot of landlords will tell you that you cannot do it, but it's a statutory right that you have because the landlord has breached the rental agreement by failing to make the repairs. You can sue for damages relating to the landlord's failure to make repairs. For instance, if there is a leak in the property and your landlord fails to address that leak and ultimately the ceiling falls in on you, and it's due to your landlord not making repairs. Now, we have to keep in mind that there has to be a breach. You can't just, you know, if it's within the 14 days, there's really no breach. And you can say a reasonable time, maybe 3 or 4 days for a plumbing leak. But if it happens on day 1 when you report it, if you don't report it you have to give your landlord notice. If you don't report it, you can't say that it's your landlord's fault that the ceiling fell in on you because they failed to address the repairs, because the writing is required. No phone conversations. If you say, well, I talked to my landlord over the phone, or my landlord told us to use the portal, and then now the landlord can't find any of your repair requests, then that puts you in a very, very unfortunate position, because now not only have you been injured in some way, but you've also don't have the proof that you need to have a remedy under Tennessee law. Okay, evictions, as James was alluding to earlier, he showed the form. I'll just briefly go over mine. I have the exact same form, but evictions generally occur in General Sessions Court. That is located on 140 Adams. I only mention that because a lot of people go to the court on Washington. There is a General Sessions criminal, but it's on Adams between 2nd and 3rd. That's how I describe it to my clients and anyone else who wants to know exactly where General Sessions Civil is. They have 2 dockets. The morning docket is at 10, the afternoon docket is at 1:30. On Fridays, it's morning only. When you go to the courthouse, you can go to room 106. Generally, they can tell you where you're supposed to be. If you're there the first time, you can get a continuance as a matter of law up to 15 days. So when you go in, they will ask you if you agree or disagree. And if you say you disagree, then you'll get a court date. And generally that's in 15 days. Now, usually that judge give 2 weeks. Now, if you have an attorney, you may be able to get the full 2 weeks, or you may get a week. It all depends on the judge. Okay, FED, that is the form that was shown earlier. It's a forcible entry, a detainer warrant. There's nothing criminal about that. It's just what it's called. It's either served by a process server or a sheriff, and it can be personally served, which means they hand it to you directly, or it can be posted on your door. The difference between the two is if you get the notice from the sheriff directly, then the landlord can get monetary damages. If it's just posted on your door, they can get possession of the property, but no monetary damage. And that's just the form. We've seen the form. Okay, and so I was mentioning room 106. There are 6 divisions. If you're there at your initial setting and you request a continuance, don't assume that your case is going to be held in the same courtroom, because it's going to be likely in a different one. Each time it's possible that it could be in the same courtroom, but you want to make sure that you verify it either by the case listing that's on the side of the door, or you verify it by going to room 106. Okay, and to just say, for instance, if you are, if a judge rules against you and you want to file an appeal, if you feel like you have an appealable ground, the clock starts in 10 days. So from the date that the judgment is entered, you have 10 days to either vacate the premises or file an appeal. Now, if you don't vacate or file an appeal, the landlord can file a writ of possession. And with that writ of possession, they can forcibly remove you from the premises. It is illegal for your landlord to come into the property and remove you without taking you to court. So if your landlord does not take you to court, they have to follow the entire eviction process. They have to take you to court, they have to give a judgment, they have to wait to 10 days, and then they have to file a writ of possession. And failure to do any of those is tantamount to an unlawful ouster. That means that you can recover for the value of your property, your security deposit, prepaid rent, whatever you have going on as far as damages are concerned. Now, if you do file an appeal, they have changed a lot of things regarding the appeal process. Generally, the landlord will still be able to get possession of the property, and your case will be bifurcated unless you put up an appeal bond, which is equivalent to a year's worth of rent. So if you don't put up the appeal bond, then generally it can be dismissed for failure to perfect the appeal. And that doesn't mean that you do not have the right to proceed on your case. It just means that the landlord is going to be granted possession of the property, and then you can go to court at a future date if you feel like that you have been, either you have a defense, which generally if it's you not paying rent, I don't advise tenants to file an appeal if it's about non-payment of rent, because there's really nothing. Only thing it's doing is allowing you more time in the property, but it's also costing you more. Okay, so if you go to circuit court, it is like general sessions never happened. If you're downstairs and you go up and appeal, it's a new trial. It has to be perfected, as I noted. And when it's dismissed because you didn't perfect it, because most of our clients, they don't have a year's worth of rent sitting up. And if you, for some off chance, do, then that your, appeal is perfected, and that money that you put up as a bond go to cover the rent while your case is waiting to get in court. But if it is remanded back to general sessions, then the landlord can file a writ of possession after that. Okay, and I guess.
So Rob, in all of these court cases and legal matters you're talking about, the client doesn't have to pay for any of that, right?
No, yeah, we are actually, no, there's only thing the client has to pay for is if the client wants to file a lawsuit, then
Okay.
they are responsible for those court costs. But as far as any attorney's fees, no, there is no charge with us.
Okay.
And we've got a couple of questions. One is regarding it, and the question is, what if you were charged for valet trash pickup, but it was not done for 4 months? The office says corporate will not do a refund or reduce the rent. That's $25 a month and it adds up for nothing. Is there any recourse for the tenant?
I think that if the work was done, then I don't see where there would actually be a claim, even if there was a delay. But there was something like, you can always give our office a call and I could speak with you. I don't want to give advice or an incomplete answer without having all the details.
Yeah, and they said it wasn't done. They said for 4 months they were charged, but it was not done.
Okay, yeah, and I think that generally as a basic answer, if you can prove that the work was not done, then you can dispute the charges. But I think that how you prove it's not done may be an issue. It may be a little bit more than just that. But like I said, you can always give us a call and, I'll be more than happy to either take on the case myself, get it assigned to other attorneys who may be able to dig a little bit deeper. And that is something that we would be able to assist with.
And Robin, can you enter your information into the chat just so people can have it?
Yes.
There was another question. Recently, MLGW had a case where the landlord did not pay their MLGW bill. What can a tenant do in those circumstances?
And I would like to expound on that before you respond. We've had a number of situations where landlords or the managers of the properties did not pay their utility bill. So out of courtesy, MLGW lets every tenant in that complex know that by X date, their water, not their electric and gas, will be disconnected. In those situations, there is a master water meter in which all the tenants' water goes through that master meter. So customers are not billed individually for water. They are billed, to my knowledge, individually for electric and gas. And also to my knowledge, if I'm not incorrect, when a tenant pays his or her rent, their water bill is a part of their rent. So when a landlord decides not to pay their MLGW utility bill, the customers are impacted. But many times there's intervention before it gets to that. But of course, if you are a customer and you receive a letter saying that your water is going to be cut off, and many don't look at and see that it's water, they assume that all of their services are going to be disconnected. It's alarming to them. So what recourse do tenants have in those situations? Say, for example, like I said, many cases there's intervention and someone pays or ends up buying a property before there's a disconnection. But suppose the process had to go through and there was a disconnection. What recourse do tenants have?
Well, what I would advise is to contact our office as soon as possible, because in a lot of cases, we can file an injunction to prevent, or delay the process. If you wait until after the utilities are turned off, generally there's not much that anyone can do other than the landlord and come and pay the bill. But if you get notice, like Gail was saying, if you get notice from Memphis Light, Gas and Water advising of a potential cutoff, always give our offices a call. We are prepared to go to federal court. We are prepared to file an injunction to try to delay the process and compel the landlord to come in and pay the monies, to prevent tenants from being without specifically when all the services are metered into one meter.
So your office does have the authority to have the landlord come in?
Well, not the landlord, we would just file a suit in federal court.
Okay, so
Like
what about landlords who live in other cities or other states outside of Memphis and Shelby County?
It shouldn't make a big difference whether the landlord is local, because usually there's a local place for service. Usually it's managed by a local company. So I think the ownership of the property is not as important unless the owner is out of town and the property is not being managed by a local company. But in most cases, from what I've seen, there are a lot of you have different companies that actually, that's all they do. They offer management services for private owners.
Oh, so I wasn't aware of this. So many of the management companies are local, which is beneficial.
Yes, just like in the last instance with Highland Heights, Multi-South is here.
Okay.
And there's another question, and I'm not quite sure. I'll read it. I'm not quite sure I understand it. You might. It says, can we get a copy of the repair process? Repairs not done and several requests made for a few issues.
Yes, I've put my number and my name down. Just give that number a call, and we have a renter's right handbook that we can send you either electronically or a hard copy. We can get that to you. So it explains the repair process, and it's important to make sure you follow the process and make sure there's not other factors, because in theory, your landlord is supposed to make all the repairs, but we know in practice, there are other things that may intervene with that, even if it's just, some landlords, they're perfect. Other ones, they might be slumlords. And I think that if you owe rent, that, or if you're a month-to-month tenant, or if your lease is about to end, sometimes your relationship with your landlord is really based on your actual relationship. It doesn't supposed to be, but it is. If your landlord likes you, they'll work with you. I've seen it time and time again. Some tenants, the landlord to work with, other tenants, they're ready for them to leave. And when they're ready for you to go, they will use any legal avenue to get you out of there. And the easiest way to get a person out is non-payment of rent.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Robin and James. I think we've just got a few announcements before we go. If there are no more questions, and while we're running through these announcements, if someone has some questions, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A. If you want more information on rental rights and repairs, Memphis Area Legal Services is doing another webinar on Monday, August 22nd from 4 to 5 p.m. And it's going to also be on Zoom. And so you can just go to meet.goto.com/817350429. We'll send this flyer out to those who are registered, so you'll have that information. Next slide. Also, if there are other resources, there are a few other resources as it relates to rent mortgage assistance and resources for renters. MIFA Emergency Services provides utility, rent, and mortgage assistance for Shelby County households who have lost income due to a recent crisis. But in addition to being able to provide financial assistance to those to prevent them from being evicted, they also have a hotline for homeless families to help them get placement. They have emergency shelter placement, and they also have rapid rehousing for those who may be in a homeless situation. So just for more information about that, go to MIFA.org. And in addition, if you want more information about other available utility assistance resources, you can go to the MOGW website, MOGW.com/utility assistance. But if you go to MOGW.com and look for the yellow icon on the home page, it'll take you to the other utility assistance resources. And our next slide. If you want to know more about what's going on at MOGW, which we want you to, please join our Power Hour, which is a live community meeting on Zoom and Facebook. This month it's going to be Thursday, August 25th at 6 p.m. So if you don't follow MLGW on Facebook, we encourage you to, and you will get that notification when we're going live. But be sure to check us out on the Power Hour. And lastly, Want to thank you for joining our third session this year. We do have another one coming up on Thursday, October 27th. This time we're going to focus on smart homes. And smart homes allow homeowners to control appliances, thermostats, lights, and other devices using technology. And this can really help you in terms of saving energy and monitoring your usage as well, as long as you've got an internet connection. So if you want to know more about smart homes and whether or not you're ready for that, please be sure to register for that session. Same link that you use for this one, mlgwneighborhoods.eventbrite.com. And to view this session and other sessions in the past, you can go to the MLGW Facebook page, just mlgw.com, and look for the community tab in our public education program. And we have all of the sessions for both this year and last year there. Gail, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I think we may have a few other questions. No.
Okay, I just want to thank our viewers for joining Memphis Light, Gas, and Water's Empowering Sustainable Neighborhoods. Today's topic was Rent with Power. I want to thank our guest, James Smith, who's with the Shelby County Division of Community Services, and attorney Robin Eugene Warren, who works for the Memphis Area Legal Services. And I'm hoping that our guests, our viewers today, found the information that was provided by both of these gentlemen as most useful. I found a lot of it useful, and I appreciate you greatly. But before I go, I do have one question about the 1st and the 5th. You said that the rent is due on the 1st and they can be cut off, and that the 5th is what? You're on mute, Robin.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, okay.
But I had to get that in before we left.
No, you're fine. And I'll be more than happy to address it really quickly. So most rental agreements, your rent is due on or before the 1st day of the month. And the Landlord-Tenant Act says that your landlord cannot impose a late fee until after the 5th day of the month.
Okay.
So generally, most tenants pay between the 1st and the 5th. And most landlords don't have a problem with that, but it becomes problematic when you are in a position where maybe you are in a conflict with your landlord, or if you're like, if your landlord has filed an eviction and you're otherwise in court. And so in theory, your rent, if you don't pay on the 1st of the month, you are in default. You're not delinquent, you're not late, but you are in default because you agreed pursuant to the terms of the contract to pay on or before the 1st day of the month. In a default of the agreement, your landlord can, because most leases waive notice, they can file an eviction. In theory, they can. So if you don't pay on the 1st, like, oh, you're in default, but most landlords do not because of the Landlord-Tenant Act. They can't impose a late fee to the 5th. But if you were in some position where you were in court, for instance, and the only time I've ever seen it for the most part play out is when you have a person in court and they're in court for a reason that may not be related to payment of rent. And if it's like, just say it's the 2nd day of September, and they say that the judge like, okay, well, you know, I agree with the tenant, and the landlord's attorney will be like, well, have you paid rent for this month? And the tenant will say, no, it's not due until the 5th, and they will ask for possession. Is that simple? Because they're in default. You defaulted on the agreement, but it's hard to explain that because in most cases it works where the payments are made between the 1st and the 5th. But you are, unless the agreement says, oh, it's due on the 5th, you really, are in default every time. And that's where waiver and notice come in, because your landlord does not have to give you any notice when you're in default, especially if it's a monetary default. Most of the times it is monetary in nature and you waive notice. So you have instances where I've only seen it where the landlord and the tenant did not get along. Because legally, if you breach a contract, the other party can decide.
So the 5th really applies only to a late fee, not so much.
It only applies to the late fee unless your rental agreement says on it before the 5th. It's just, like I said, most landlords, because they can't impose a late fee until after the 5th, they really don't do anything as far as saying, well, you didn't pay on the 1st, you're in default, even though they are in default, because they promised to pay on or before the 1st day of the month. And it, like I said, if you're into it with your landlord, it becomes an issue then. But a lot of people don't understand that because the landlord has allowed it to go on for so long, and then something happens and now it's like, oh, they're not accepting your rent. It was due on the 1st. And most landlords, they know the law. They'll tell you, well, you didn't pay, it was due on the 1st, so I'm evicting you. And they can do that. So it's careful to pay your rent on time, especially if you're having a problematic landlord.
Well, I appreciate that clarification because it was really on my mind.
Yeah.
Because I do know a lot of people will hold out till the 5th, just based on, whatever reasons they may need to do this. So I want to thank you, James, and I want to thank you, Robin. I also want to thank Beverly Perkins, who does an excellent job on working with these programs, as well as today we had Cynthia Haley and Sharita Goodman, Terica Lamb, Darren Sharp, and we also have Nathan Smith, who help us get these programs off the ground to provide our customers with the most current and most needed information to help make their lives, the quality of their lives better. So thank you for watching. We're out.